Hello, everyone. We will get started in about 15 minutes. Who's that on the iPad?
Mike Fitzpatrick.
Hi, Mike.
Hello.
I couldn't tell who that was.
Jerry Barkey.
I see you. You have a name. The Mike's just says iPad. So.
Oh.
Hi, guys.
Okay, then I'll mute myself back, okay?
Okay, thank you, Jer. Hi, Kay.
Hi, Dolly.
How are you? How was your trip?
Oh, it was excellent. It goes by too fast, but being with family is great.
Absolutely. We'll get started in about 10 more minutes.
Okie dokie, I'll go powder my nose.
Thanks. Hi, Scott. Hi, Mike. How are you?
Good, how are you? I'm
Good.
sure anyone's there
Yeah. Is there anybody in there?
yet.
Yep, we're gonna get started in about 5 minutes.
Are you guys going on video or no?
No, this PowerPoint is pretty long, so I'm just gonna keep the PowerPoint up.
Okay, so we're not doing video.
Yep, because I'm gonna refer to a lot of the stuff in the PowerPoint.
Okay. Are you gonna be able to tell how many people are watching, if anybody is?
Kevin will be back with us in a bit. We're currently live on YouTube. He started it for me and then had to go to another meeting, and then he'll be back. So he should be able to tell us
Okay,
at the end.
cool. Who else from the board was gonna be on?
We have,
I'm here.
Yep, Scott's here. Mike Fitzpatrick's here. Kay is here, and Jerry Barkey's here. So the only ones, I think Paul had a meeting, and Jerry might still be out of town.
Yep. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Oh,
And then we have Neil. Kevin will be back shortly, and then Stacy Swart is with us. All right, I think we're almost ready to get started. We have everyone that I expected to be here. And this is just a workshop, so there will be no action or anything taken today. This is just kind of me giving the board an update on where we are with our return to school roadmap. I have quite a PowerPoint that the superintendents in the county have put together. This is the same PowerPoint that we are using with all of our boards, just to kind of explain where we were and where we've been and where we are now. So just to clarify, we have Mr. Schulte, Mr. Fitzpatrick, Mr. Barkey, Ms. Walsh, Mr. Hiller. And then we also have with us Mr. Casabon is here, Ms. Sward is here, and Kevin should be back shortly. He set us up and then ran to another meeting. So are we ready?
Sure. Yep.
Okay.
I think so.
All right. So thank you for making time this afternoon to go through all of this. What I want to go through is I'm just going to kind of give you a little bit of history. So obviously we have a lot of things to contend with when we talk about what school will look like this fall. And we are operating using a variety of documents. The first one is the return to school roadmap. And that was the one put out by the governor that with the team that she had put together that kind of gave us everything that we were required to do, and then what they would recommend to do in certain phases of our Safe Start plan. And they fell into a variety of these categories like governance, wellness, instruction, post-secondary opportunities, facilities, operations, and technology. So all of those things coincide with this other document, the My Safe Start plan, which you've seen. And this is where she takes us from one phase of reopening to the other. Currently, we sit in phase 4. As you may recall, some of the northern areas had moved up to phase 5, but are now back in phase 4. And if we split this in half, in any phase of 1 through 3, we are in remote instruction. In any of phase 4 through 6, we are allowed to have in-person instruction. So in the roadmap, as I mentioned, we are currently in stage 4. And what we've done as a county is all of the superintendents have worked together. We divided up all of those categories you saw earlier about governance and instruction and things like that. And we went through this roadmap specifically. The Safe School roadmap, if you looked at it, it is very extensive, but it goes over a lot of general things in the beginning about just what we've been through during these uncertain times, that we obviously want to return to school, but we want to do it safely. And the governor continues to give us executive orders that help us return to school. So the latest one that works specifically with us is Executive Order 142, which, as you know, requires the board to adopt a preparedness response plan. So that is what we are going to talk about today. In addition, they have some FAQs that are out there in the beginning of the roadmap that talk about what is the role of the school board in this. And I think this is the big thing that people are concerned about, because when we put out this roadmap, this kind of gives you what we specifically are required to do. And then as we get down into more of the weeds, when we work with our teachers and with our administrators to figure out how we're actually going to get that done, that's much more specific. The board is just going to give us the direction of what exactly you want us to for sure do. And then our administrators and teachers and groups of people that we have put together will be determining how that happens. And it will answer a lot of the questions that we hear from parents, like do kids have to wear facial coverings? Do teachers have to wear facial coverings? What happens if a kid's tests positive, etc. So there was a variety of things that happened in order to gather some feedback. So in order to start with that, we took the Macomb County Preparedness Response Plan that the superintendents had gone through, and we developed planning teams in these 4 categories. We kind of divided up those other categories that they had, and the ISD said that we had 4 main ones. There's safety, all of the things in the roadmap that deal with safety. those that deal with operations, those that deal with social emotional, and those that deal with instruction. And then I have asked the teachers who have been doing the same thing. They have their committees that are in the same 4 buckets. And now that the teams have had time to go through this and look at everything, those admin teams and teacher teams under these 4 categories will be getting together to kind of get into the nitty gritty of how this is going to happen. So the role of the board, as I mentioned, is just to adopt the initial preparedness response plan. So what we're doing today is going through this workshop and going through the actual My Safe School summary roadmap following the executive order guidelines. There's the summary page at the beginning of the roadmap, and then in the end, it requires 3 signatures: the superintendent, the Board of Ed, and then the ISD. So once we have adopted our preparedness plan and the board approves it, we will then send it to the ISD, and then he will send it on to the state. The nitty gritty stuff, that's really the important stuff, which I think people are most concerned about, that does not take board approval. That will be worked out within our committees and presented to the board as we go through those things. So like I mentioned, the roadmap came out. This is the governor and her task force and the advisory council. They came up with this roadmap, and then our ISD took the document and created the template that you will see that I shared with you last week, that has all of the things that we are recommending. So the document contains all the things around safety protocols, mental and social emotional health, instruction, and operations. And there are similarities and differences between what is required, what is strongly recommended and recommended from the roadmap to the ISD template. So what we're going to do today is review the draft, and this is the countywide plan. So all of the superintendents, we had divided up into those 4 categories as well. And then we came back as a whole group to discuss everything that we had recommended. And then we were taking it back to our individual boards. Each section obviously describes the countywide response to each phase. So whether we're 1 through 3, 4, 5, or 6. And we have collaboratively examined the best practices in the areas of safety and instruction and operations and social and emotional health. Obviously, some things are nuanced between each district. So you may see a recommendation that references professional learning communities, and that wasn't recommended because not everybody has a professional learning community. But those will be implemented in each district, however the district chooses to implement them. I just want to say I appreciate the work of the ISD, obviously my fellow superintendents, but also the county executive's office and the health department and other organizations that have come forward to help us out. I think I've mentioned to you the county executive office has used some of their CARES money to do all of the purchasing of PPE in 5 main categories, whether it be masks or cleaning supplies, etc. They have leveraged their ability to get that in mass and have done that on behalf of the districts and have paid for it with their CARES money. So I greatly appreciate the executive's office and JP in particular for all the work that he has done to help us out. In addition, the county health department, Dr. Lokar and Bill Rodella have been instrumental and on all of our superintendent calls, at least at the beginning of them, before we get off into the weeds about specific things. But they, some health departments have not been willing to come out with like an explanation and then like a flow chart of what to do if this happens, what to do if this happens, but ours has. And I appreciate Dr. Lokar's willingness to do that. He understands what an important part the schools play in the community, but he also understands that, you know, there are a lot of moving parts and that his ability to give us like a flow chart and what to do in certain situations is extremely helpful and helps us as we go forward and make decisions. So in addition, obviously we have no idea what is going to happen, but we are going to work with our stakeholders. Like I said, Michelle has her committees that we'll be meeting with our committees to get into some of those customized reopening plans that meet the student needs of our districts specifically. Obviously, if you think about our POHI program, obviously we have some kids with some higher medical fragility than other districts might have. So that obviously we would have to take that into consideration differently than some other districts. Our roadmap will outline the details of our plans, but the nuts and bolts of our the nuts and bolts of our day-to-day operations. And we're going to bring that to you at our next meeting after our subcommittees have had a chance to flush all of that out. In addition, I know some people have asked what we've been doing to strengthen remote instruction, improve access to devices, etc. We have been, teachers have been doing online PD. Kara had set up at the beginning of all this, way back in April, kind of a course that stood out there, and her and Kevin kept uploading all types of virtual professional development that teachers could participate in remotely from their home to help strengthen some of that online instruction. And we have been working, obviously, to find out what access our parents have and what they need should remote learning continue. So in summary, we have 2 documents and work groups. We have the countywide plan, which I'm going to go through with you today. And this is the document that the board needs to approve and that we need to send to the ISD by August 15th. It provides documentation on what we will do to meet everything that the governor said was required, and summarizes how we were going to do those specific things in each phase. Our document, the Warren Woods Return to School Roadmap, outlines what that looks like on a day-to-day basis. So how are we going to handle passing time at Tower? How are we going to handle entrance and exits of students in the building? How are we going to handle elementary kids moving about the building? So that will be much more specific, and that will reflect our committees, the survey data that we've sent out to parents, and community webinars, etc. And it'll provide us the day-to-day for our return to school scenarios. Obviously, we are not going to be able to answer every single thing that comes up, but we will do the best that we can. And the only thing I've learned in the last few months is it will change. So as soon as we do it, something will happen and it will change. So let me go through the countywide return to school plan. Like I said, we had taken this from the working template that the ISD had created, and summarizes our response to each one. So in general, the beginning of the document talks about virus status, how you keep communities safe, how school operating statuses work, essential actions and safety protocols, the categories, the insurances that we're supposed to do, and then it also goes through that executive order I mentioned, number 142, that talks about us creating a plan and adopting it. The final of our countywide plan, what you're going to see is any items that had strikeouts or which have been omitted have been removed from the final version. So what I'm going to show you has every single thing that was in the roadmap. And if it was highlighted or struck out, that's the things that we're not recommending. And then the final product will just have the ones that we're recommending. But I wanted you to be able to see what we had chosen to keep and what we didn't keep. All references to required, strongly recommended, or recommended have been omitted. So it's just a list of things that we are going to do. This document outlines what each district will do for each phase in one list of bulleted items and combines and omits the ones that we aren't going to use. Obviously, all of the required items have been kept in the plan. If it was required, it's in there. It also includes local implementation strategies in some of the phases, but not everything that's going to be so specific to Warren Woods. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so let's take a look at the first category, which would be safety protocols. There weren't any edits, so you'll see that in the category safety protocols, personal protective equipment, there were no edits on behalf of the county. Facial coverings, gloves, and other required PPE will be provided for all staff and will be made available at each building or department through the PPE committee. So that's the committee that we had worked with at the county. And they're providing us that through December, I believe. And then Neil has been working hard to get us even more PPE, so we are prepared for the entire phase. I believe our team is working on like the disposable masks that we have. We'll have 2 per person per day. So you can have 1 for the morning and 1 for the afternoon. If you wanted to bring your own, you could bring your own. But there are no edits in that, and we are keeping it. All of the local implementation strategies, as it gets a little more specific, like you can bring your own mask, or you will be provided 2 per day. That will be covered in our Warren Woods plan. So here is the specific information about safety protocols with hygiene, referred to hygiene. And there are edits in this one. You'll see, obviously in phases 1 through 3, we're closed. Phase 4, there are these 2 bullets that are required, so none of that has been removed. In regard to strongly recommended, we have 2 things that have been taken out. One just refers specifically to hand washing with soap and water. Obviously, we will encourage that, and we will do that as we can, but we will provide hand sanitizer to make sure that we meet those hourly requirements. And then obviously limit use of classroom materials to small groups, disinfect, etc. We will have options for that as well. But those 2 have been removed, and then the same thing has been removed from phase 5. And then the last bit about hygiene in phase 5, it's again the thing about scheduling hand washing for 2 to 3 hours and limiting the classroom materials to small groups. So we will, that's something that our teachers and our principals will have to look at. So like if you're going into a STEM class, how can we make sure that those materials, we want kids to still be able to use them and to learn that topic and use that stuff, but how can we do that safely? As I said, hand washing and sanitizing is going to be available for all students. The amount of hand sanitizer Neil has over there in his office is scary almost, but they will be available for students as they're moving around the building before and after eating, activities, etc. Obviously, staff is going to distribute and monitor that use of hand sanitizer, especially with the little kids, because that obviously is a concern. Classroom supplies, which will normally be shared, will be limited and cohorted as much as feasible, so that we can limit the exposure to a small group of kids if necessary. And then students will be advised to use hand sanitizer as they enter a new space of the building with staff supervision. So it would be if, at the middle school, if they were going from ELA to, let's say, a math class, they would as they enter the room, they would be encouraged to use that hand sanitizer. Obviously, there are much more local implementation strategies that will come with the hygiene, but those are the required ones from the roadmap. With regard to spacing, movement, and access, there's not a lot of changes in here. Obviously, the required schools are closed, so none of that has changed. In the strongly recommended, we discuss the social distancing, which I think is a big thing for parents. So let me, as soon as I skip through the next one, I'll talk about that. And again, in phase 4 for spacing, movement, and access, there are a couple regarding the 6 feet of distance in hallways. Boarding schools obviously doesn't apply to anyone in the county, so we took that out. Entrances and exits. Obviously, we will work with our individual buildings on that, but that was not something the county in general was going to go through. And then those same recommended ones are repeated over here in phase 5. So it's the same ones that have been deleted. And when we talk about spacing, as I mentioned, we're going to space the student desks as much as feasible. As soon as the principals and the teachers finish their nitty-gritty part, Neil has already told the principals that he will be coming over and they will be looking at what that looks like operationally in each building. So there may be that, there's some furniture in classrooms that we need to take out of there so we can space things out. A lot of teachers have some of those comforts like couches and things like that. And, perhaps at this time that's not appropriate, just so that we can have more room to spread out. We will do training for everyone to address the maintaining of 6 feet or more in the hallway with staggered movements. This includes walking on one side of the hallway, which we've always talked about, like let's say at Pinewood, because they go in the one side of the circle or not, or one-way stairwells. If you think about tower and you think about if the stairway in front of near the commons was the up and the one in the back is the only one that you can go down in, and that's going to take some time for kids to get used to. So we're definitely going to have to train kids and staff to remember what that looks like. And then obviously our staff members will work to do the same while they're in school. But more of that nitty gritty things like those one-way hallways will come from our local implementation. And then under safety protocols, when you talk about screening students and staff and guests, the only thing we talked about is entrance exits should be separate to keep traffic moving in a single direction. That's the only thing that we have taken out. The rest of these things that are all recommended in all of these areas do remain in the recommended plan. So we are going to keep strict records of visitors. We're going to ask that families check their child's temperature every morning using a thermometer, and if the temperature is greater than 100, they need to stay home. Also, they're encouraged to monitor their children for symptoms. We also have the list of symptoms from the health department specifically that we can distribute to staff so that, in case something happens during the day, we want to make sure that we're monitoring those kids specifically. Obviously, when we do that, we have to take into consideration HIPAA and FERPA, so this is the health one. This is the Federal Education Rights to Privacy Act laws. For those that may fall ill, obviously we can't talk about specifically about those things, but we do have to keep people safe and make sure that we are providing the information that staff needs in order to keep themselves safe. So we will follow those laws, but we will do it in a way so that we keep our own staff safe. If people need an N95 or a KN95 mask, I think the plan says that when they're doing some medical procedures, and that might help come into play with some of our medically fragile kids in the PI or CI program. We will get those, and the county executive office is working on that for us. And then our teams that are doing our local implementation are going to work on those entrances and exits to decide what's the best safety protocol. If we can make sure that everybody comes in this front door and goes out a different door, we'll do that as much as possible. And we'll have to monitor those during the day to make sure that we're doing everything that we need to. And the last thing is regard to testing protocols for students and staff. We kept all the strongly recommended and recommended language. As I mentioned, there is the county health department document. Let's see if it works when I click this link. And I do appreciate, can you see that?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay, hold on. Now can you see it? Nope.
Nope, still same sign.
Nope.
I saw it circle when you clicked on it, but I didn't see anything afterwards.
How about that? No.
There you go.
There you go.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so this is the draft, and I uploaded this yesterday, and I already got a new one today because it literally seems to change by the day. But this is the draft of that the health department has put together for us. So they give us the possible COVID cases, symptoms, and they define what close contact would be. I think that's really important to make sure that we know exactly what that looks like, within 6 feet for at least 15 minutes with a confirmed case of COVID. You'll notice that the differences between the symptoms are a bit different for kids than they are for staff. As you all know from your own children, kids often get colds or allergies or a stomach ache or things like that, that we can often, stomach aches we can sometimes fix with a Band-Aid, you never know. But when kids come down with some of those, it might just be something typical. So we just want to make sure that we monitor those significantly, but they are different than the ones for like an adult or a staff person. Because with an adult, it would be one of the following or two of the other. Muscle aches, chills, sore throat, or headache. They're definitely seeing a difference between adults and children. So they go through that for us. They give us specifically, if we have a confirmed case, we need to notify the health department. We notify the staff of any confirmed case in the school while maintaining the confidentiality. We have to work with the health department. They give us specific things for elementary or middle school and how to notify a close contact. And then, the need to close, a lot of people have asked if we have to close the school, do we close the classroom? That's something that Dr. Lokar, if something were to happen here in Warren Woods, he would call me and then he and I would discuss that and make a determination of what the best scenario would be. In addition, they talk about close contacts with a confirmed case. Sometimes people talk about, well, my mom was in close contact and then I came in contact with my mom. They specifically delineate that there's no actions necessary for someone that is a contact of a contact, which I think is something that we've dealt with even this summer for people that have come into contact with someone that had a contact. They just recommend that it's specifically with those with direct contact. And then they give us the details about returning to work or school. And then, like I said, I do have a actual flow chart that they have given us that kind of walks us through step by step that we can even share with principals that they could use, if somebody comes down to the office complaining of a certain symptom. Okay, I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. Okay, are we back to the PowerPoint?
Yep.
Okay. And then the next one for the safety protocols is responding to positive tests from students and staff. Obviously, we have been given that directly from the health department, so that is the guidance that we will use. We've kept the required and the strongly recommended. And then we are working with Matt to determine the best way for cleaning staff. They go from wearing a surgical mask and gloves and a face shield, and they phase those kind of down. So if Matt will be working specifically with his staff to make sure that we are following all the safety protocols. As it said in the health department document, we will follow these laws for anyone that contracts COVID, and we'll provide training and guidelines for staff with regard to the flow chart or what needs to happen. And they will all be provided the proper PPE when performing cleaning or disinfecting of any area. The next two are for food service, extracurricular activities, etc. You'll notice that there's the only thing that is required in phase 4 is to prohibit indoor assemblies that bring together students of one or more classroom. And so it's important to point out that the governor refers to assemblies like a magician or somebody that's coming in specifically where you bring the whole class to the auditorium. That is the type of assembly that's limited there. We will, lunch is not considered an assembly. That's actually lunch serving in a cafeteria. So those are treated differently in this phase. Obviously, using outdoor areas, if you can, some of that can be done. Obviously, that's not always the easiest to do at the elementary, so we left that off because it will depend on the level of students and how we can stagger that, how we can perhaps stagger some times so that we can spread kids out across the cafeteria. Tower, we could use some of the commons, but those are the things that the teachers and the principals are working on in their committees. When we go forward to athletics, obviously we've talked a lot about athletics because we already have some teams that are working. Obviously in phase 4, we are following the MHSAA guidelines, which continue to change. So all of those remain as required. In this phase 5, strongly recommended, we have deleted this part about indoor spectator events are limited to 50 and large outdoor scale are limited to 25. I know that the MAC athletic directors, so that's all of the athletic directors in the Macomb Area Conference, are working to try to come up with something that's similar so that everyone is doing the same thing. We don't want one school to do it one way and another one to do it another way, and it would make it difficult for parents who perhaps thought they could attend an event, come to find out that somebody else has a different protocol. So we want to make sure that we're sticking together. So we're going to leave that up to those people. And then obviously with the handshakes and fist bumps, we're obviously discouraging that all along. So that part is not included. And when we do, obviously, you know that when, my son is a baseball player, anytime somebody gets a hit or something, you get down to first base, you're going to give them a high five or something like that. It's reactionary almost to kids. They can't help themselves. That's just what they do. So we're going to remind them as much as possible that, we can't do that. That MAC is going to work with the MHSAA to talk about the spectators, and we're going to provide, we'll have to take into consideration physical distance and crowd sizes to be considered. Like if you think of our band has almost 200 kids in it. If we have the band plays at a football game and we're only allowed 200 people in the audience, there is no audience. It's just the team and the band, because that's all we could fit within the guidelines. And then the next two are about continuing safety protocols with cleaning. Obviously, these things that are strongly recommended in phase 5, we will have the ability to continue to do those with all of the supplies that we are gathering. We are recommending that it not specifically be listed in there because when, let's see this one, libraries, computer labs, art, and other hands-on classrooms shown to go cleaning after every class period, we will have those things on site. We just didn't want to put it in here specifically because depending on who is available at that time, we might not have a custodian available at that time. We will provide the kids this hand sanitizer. They will have all the opportunity to use that, but perhaps at that time, we won't have a custodian who could go through every single computer lab at the change of every classroom. Same thing with the playground instructor structure. The next one refers to busing. Obviously, all of this is required in phase 4. So they have to use hand sanitizer before they get on the bus. They have to wear a mask on the bus and a variety of other things. We have kept all of those requireds and many of the strongly recommended as well. We took out the ones specifically with regard to hand sanitizer and masks. Obviously, we can encourage it, but we wouldn't make it required. We will have it available for kids to use. If a student becomes sick during the day, they should not use group transportation to return home. We've never allowed that. So we left that out because that is never. And if a sick driver becomes sick, we obviously follow the health department guidelines for that. So we took that one out. And then weather permitting, consider keeping windows open in the vehicle. Obviously, we will do whatever we can to keep them open when cleaning because we don't want anyone to get sick with the chemicals. But depending on what the situation is on the bus, we left that one off for recommended. And then the next one for safety is the medically vulnerable students. Obviously, we've in this case we've kept all the strongly recommended and most of the recommended. The only one we didn't is enable staff with high risk for illness to minimize face-to-face contact, allow them to maintain a distance of 6 feet from others. Some districts didn't have that opportunity, so we took that out. And they could or telework, if I couldn't read that word, telework if possible. So obviously that would be handled on a case-by-case basis. The last one that we took out under phase 5 is the same thing with regard to high risk. So if you look at the end of the safety protocols for medically vulnerable students, the countywide procedures will be created for all staff, including those who are documented as medically fragile or high risk. I know some people have asked, are there any exceptions or things that we could do, if my child has cystic fibrosis and can't wear a mask all day? Obviously, we will be working with that. So our teams, and as they develop their local implementation strategies, are working to make sure we delineate those things so parents know what needs to happen if they have a child with a medical issue that perhaps can't wear a mask on the bus or all day long in school. So we will work with our teams to make sure that parents are aware of all of those things. I'm going to take a stop right here and ask if there's any specific questions with regard to safety.
I had a question. This is Scott. Hiller. With the medically vulnerable students and staff, you said you had some parents ask about, if their children are unable to. Is there going to be any kind of similar to like vaccines, like medically document, something from a doctor saying that the child has a condition that they're not able to wear it?
Yes, that's what we would ask for, I believe, and I've looked at most of the recommendations that have come from the principals and the teachers, and their recommendation is obviously we ask for a doctor's note that says this child has been diagnosed with X and as such can't wear a mask for, the entire school day.
Is there a list, whether from the state or county, that like a list of conditions that
Oh.
I guess would fall into that category of being exempt from wearing a mask or facial covering?
That's a very good question. I will, we have our call with the health department. I will definitely ask if they can provide us with a list of things. Because usually, like with the vaccine thing, they have to go to the health department in
Right.
order to get the exemption. So I'm sure that they would be willing to provide us with that.
Okay.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Anything else? Okay, the next one is mental and social emotional health. Obviously, this is has been a big concern for all of us during this entire situation. The ramifications of kids being stuck at home or not being able to participate with their peers or not even having contact with peers. In some cases, they're just at home with adults. So obviously there is a lot of things going on with mental and social emotional health. We have discussed in our admin team, and I know that the social workers here are also in favor of doing some of these things, to use a program just to make sure that we assess where kids are, where they are with their mental health, whether they're in class or remote, just to check in to see where they are, how they're doing. We're working on trying to create leveled so that perhaps the little quiz that the kids would take at the elementary looks a little different with emojis and things like that than the kids at the high school. We're going to use a variety of strategies to make sure that we maintain regular communication with kids if we are in phase 1 through 3, obviously. Similar to what we did in the past, regarding phone calls, written letters, emails, virtual meetings via Microsoft Teams or in Schoology, just so that staff can continue to stay connected and keep those supportive relationships. We are also working to maintain connections in existing supports if we have to close and if we're in a phase 1 through 3. We'll make sure that we have a path for families to connect with certified staff. So we have our social workers or our psychologists that can provide support services to families. And how can we do that for them, when we're in a lockdown situation? In addition, we have taken a look at this CASTLE, which is I can't remember the acronyms because Jerry Green's not here. Something for social emotional learning to leverage the power of that. It's a guideline that many groups have used in the past to help kids and parents to make sure that they understand, where kids are, how to connect with kids, how to connect virtually, how do parents look at their own mental health and how they can better support their kids, create those safe, supportive environments, not only in the classroom, in the remote classroom, but then also at home, so kids feel comfortable talking about their feelings and their relationships and continuously improve. Our local implementation strategies for that will revolve around some training, whether it be that we're using a specific assessment that the ISD has recommended here, or if it's some work that our guidance counselors and social workers have been doing throughout. I know one of the things that they did at the middle school was like a virtual scavenger hunt, which I think kids found fun, but just something to get them connected. In addition, moving forward from phase 4, we will continue to use those screeners. Now, if we're back face-to-face in phase 4, it would give us a little better opportunities. We actually get to see the kids in person and to talk to them and see perhaps how they're reacting. A lot of times kids don't want to be seen on the Zoom or the Microsoft call, so when you're not actually seeing their faces every single day and seeing what's going on or seeing how they're even walking into the room, those are types of things that we can then use in the certain situation and kind of combine it with the context of what's been going on to inform how we're going to help that child. We're going to use as many community resources, obviously, as possible. We have our partnership with CARE and all of our guidance counselors and social workers, obviously, are going to be getting some additional training with regard to social emotional wellness and trauma in the classroom, because everything that has happened over the last 6 months is considered trauma. So our kids are going to be struggling with those kind of things, even if it's kids that have been at home and now are coming back to a more structured environment. That can be traumatic for kids. And then we also need to think about our own staff. How can we support our own staff? We have a, what's the name of that, Neil? We have our own wellness.
Employee assistance program.
Yes, that's the one. Employee assistance program for our staff. And, we send out reminders or opportunities for them or people that they can contact to talk to. And I think that's been great, especially during this pandemic. We launched it literally just before or right after this had all started, which couldn't have been more timely. And so we hope that staff are taking advantage of the opportunities that are offered in there to help themselves as we move forward. So all of those things will be continued throughout phase 4 as well. Obviously, these are types of things that we would do normally, but I don't think that the specific check-ins for each kid were done as much as we could in the last round of remote learning. So if we need to go that route again, I think it will definitely be beefed up and we'll have some good procedures in place so that we can check on those kids specifically. So we didn't take anything out of those recommendations at all for the social emotional health section. Any questions about social emotional health? All right, moving on to instruction, obviously the big one. This one falls into a few different categories. Obviously, the first one listed up here as instruction is governance. And so the county has recommended that we are all using a variety of different methods, whether it be technical or a combination of methods. Some school districts use Google Classroom, some use Schoology, some will use Zoom, some will use Microsoft Office. So obviously we'll have a variety of decisions to make to improve our remote instruction. The surveys that I've shared with both the teachers and the principals as they're working on their local implementation strategies is obviously parents were overwhelmed with the amount of resources that kids were getting. So if they all logged into Schoology, but then they had to use like 16 different logins for this program or this program, parents definitely want that more streamlined. In addition, parents mentioned they want it to look more uniform. So when they log in for their 3rd grader, it looks the same as when they log in for their 6th grader, because sometimes that can be overwhelming as well. And then how we communicate with them. If somebody's using Remind and somebody else is sending you an email and somebody else is sending you a text, that can be overwhelming. So what's the best way that we can kind of streamline that all and make sure that we're doing that appropriately for our families? So that would come under governance, because that was how we would decide how to set those things up and then communicate. And then in phase 4 through 5, obviously, like I said, we've met regularly, and we have worked with all of a variety of different groups, and we have established our return to work teams both in the district and across the county. And once we develop what looks best for us, we will move forward with that. Obviously, the biggest concern I've heard since we sent this document out, and then in addition, our one-page discussion about phases 1, 4, or 5, the parents have some concerns. Their biggest concern that they have emailed me about is the use of Edgenuity. So I had a discussion with Michelle Bastian today, the union president, and we do agree that there's some misinformation out there, and that some people have taken some things and perhaps twisted it. So her and I are working on a joint letter that we will send out to parents to kind of explain to them exactly, yes, that we've been working together. This isn't something that we've done on our own. And then why the partnership with Edgenuity is being brought up now. Michelle and I, we've had this in district for 13 years, but no one ever, it wasn't a big deal. No one ever really wanted to use it. There was only a handful of kids that would use it every year. And so, it's not that we're trying to outsource teachers, and we're not trying to take any jobs away from anyone. We want to make sure that parents have the opportunity to feel comfortable, whether they're keeping their kid home and doing it virtually or sending them to school. But we also want our staff to be comfortable with what that virtual learning looks like, and to require them to do not only in-person teaching, but then virtual teaching to a whole different set of kids might be a lot to ask. And so if we get enough kids to, run a 3rd grade, and I have a teacher that says, hey, I can teach those 30 kids online, then we will most definitely use our own people. And, Michelle has been communicating that, but I think some of that might have gotten twisted around, or perhaps people didn't read their emails when they were sent out. So her and I are going to come out with a joint letter, I think, that will help explain a lot of that. Any questions specifically about that? I think the letter will help. Some parents did CC or ask me to share their letters with the board, and obviously I will do that in the next at the next board meeting under correspondence. And they most of them it's like a similar letter, so it's the same letter, so they're just continuing. I think it was like a template that one parent wrote up, and so that parent sent it out to somebody, and then each person would add their name to it. So I will make sure that each of those is included in your packet for the first. In regard to remote instruction, we have no edits with regard to what the county is suggesting. We will do everything that we can, obviously, to make sure that we are prepared to deliver remote instruction. The ISD has been great about producing videos and screencasts and things like that, and making those available for teachers to make sure that they're ready to go. We're also considering, obviously, we have things that we need to do for our English language learner population. Some of the things that we do send out, obviously, are difficult to get translated, but how can we use the bilingual services to help us better communicate with our limited English speaking families? Because we did find that in the last round of remote learning, that some of those kids, we struggled to get in touch with those kids. So we're definitely going to do more to communicate our learning plans in their home language so that they can make an informed decision. We've used several remote instructional frameworks. Our district has worked on one of our own, so we will be working with our teachers on that. And then how to create high quality instructional learning in a remote context. You'll see a lot of the use of these words, synchronous and asynchronous. Synchronous means it's at the same time, so we all, like we are doing now, we all log in at the exact same time, and we do a lecture or participate in group projects, something like that. An asynchronous environment would be that I would tape it, and then the kids could watch it when they want to. Could be later in the evening, could be later in the afternoon or early in the morning. But that's the difference between the synchronous and the asynchronous. I think we definitely heard loud and clear from parents that they want more of the synchronous. They want to see teachers teaching live to their kids, so that kids can, specifically ask questions about the lesson and about whatever topic it is that they're covering. Obviously, that will take strong routines. We're going to have to work on how to engage kids. A lot of our teachers have gone through so much training in Kagan. We talk about that a lot, which is cooperative learning. But how does cooperative learning look when you're all in a remote environment? That's very different. So Kagan has offered that training, and we will be working to, when our teachers come back for professional development, our teachers will be teaching our other teachers what that looks like. In addition, obviously we're going to continue to create learning environments so that kids can still develop relationships with their teachers and their peers, because that's definitely what they've been missing when they've been locked up in their homes. The next section for instruction talks about before school reopens. And so all of these things we have kept. The only things that we have taken out are the ones obviously in yellow. The first one is every student will start the year with access to grade level instruction, high quality standards, aligned curriculum in every subject. Obviously, we're doing that. The concern is the next bullet, which is the assessment of that. What does that look like? Are we going to do NWA? Are we going to require all that? And not every district was on the same page with regards to that requirement. So we left it out. That doesn't mean that that's not something that we would be putting in on our own here in Warren Woods, to make sure that we understand where kids are, because obviously they've gone back a little without all that in-person instruction last time. So meeting them where they are when they get here and how we can move them forward. The yellow one that's blocked out down here under strongly recommended for phase 4 is just regarding using power standards. Not everyone uses that phrase, so we left that out. In Warren Woods, we talk about essentials. Every unit has a specific amount of essentials, and then teachers figure out how to focus and prioritize and accelerate instruction based on those essentials. And this is the second page for before school reopens. We've kept all of these recommendations that we're clearly obviously going to communicate what the expectations are for teaching. Teachers need to know exactly what they're expected to do with regard to synchronous instruction or asynchronous, or how many face-to-face contacts, or how many times they need to communicate in writing or in person. So obviously we will work together to come up with what we think is best, keeping in mind the social emotional things that, those contacts that those kids need to feel that connection so that they can still feel part of our community. We can use that CASTLE framework, which is the social emotional learning framework, to make sure that we have recommendations to make sure that the kids we're meeting all of their needs. The ISD has agreed to continue to provide us professional learning to support that. And then we have contacted the trauma center at Western Michigan, and they will be doing some professional development for our team as well, so that we can better support students who need that. Under instruction, there's the communication and family supports. We have maintained all of these. There are no edits to what the county has recommended. Obviously, the most important thing we can do is make sure that we communicate with families and that we understand what they need and how we can continue to support them. I think I have gotten pretty good feedback from parents with regard to the amount of communication they have received from us. If anything, at some point they'd had enough. So, I just want to make sure that we're reaching them, the way that they want to be reached, and that we're reaching them in the language that they are most comfortable with. So our teams will be working on our local implementation strategies to make sure that we can reach all of those people based on the things that we've heard in our surveys, and that we get parents the training that they need. If we're using Schoology, parents, that's something new. None of us went to school with a learning management system. So how can we better support parents with their use of Schoology, what that looks like, we heard loud and clear that parents wanted access to Schoology. We wanted like a parent portal for that. So we have worked with the ISD to make sure that that option is available in the fall as well if we are remote, so that parents can see everything that's going on in the Schoology classes without having to log in as the child. And this is continued from the last page. There are no edits to this one. We are also keeping all of these as much as we can. We're going to do everything in the home language and make sure that we use the bilingual staff at the ISD to assist us with that. Many of our families speak Hmong, which is difficult to translate into a written language. So we will definitely be calling on the ISD to make sure if we're not hearing from those families in regard to what choice they would like to make for the fall, that we're reaching out to them to get that information. The next section for instruction is professional learning. There's only one edit in there. It's just the last thing. And obviously in Warren Woods, we have the professional learning community structure, but not everybody does. I think one of the things our teachers would tell you is that they appreciated their professional learning community the last time we were in remote learning. They collaborated extremely well with regard to creating those lessons and making sure that they had everything uploaded and available to kids, just to make sure that it's all appropriate, that we get the right amount of work established, but that it's not overwhelming for most. So we've taken that out. We do use the professional learning communities. I do think our team did a great job. Some districts weren't comfortable with that, so they wanted to take that one out. But I think if we could keep the structure that we had in place from the spring with regard to teachers working together, I think that would work out well. The rest of these for phases 4 and 5 remain. We have not taken anything out that was strongly recommended or recommended. We will be training people. We will be helping them develop lessons. We will give them opportunities to learn more about remote learning. And go back. And we will also obviously provide time for teachers to learn more things. Like I said, we have those courses already uploaded, but then we are also working to plan additional professional development at the beginning of the year when people return, so that we can kind of beef up those things and they can get started working together to develop those remote things if that's necessary. The next one is for professional learning. There are no edits on this one either. Like I mentioned, the ISD website is updated frequently. It reflects all of that professional learning that is available. We obviously have put that in our Schoology class that we created for teachers about remote learning, but then that's also something that they can provide, they can access on their own from home in any of those kind of things that they're interested in learning more about, whether it be providing online instruction or how to make virtual connections to the trauma-informed learning or the social emotional frameworks. Those are all available to them already out on the ISD website. And in phase 4, we will build upon the learning that has taken place in phases 1 through 3. Obviously, if we're not in person, a lot of that is going to have to be done virtually. But in phase 4, if we can come back, then we can be working with each other in classrooms and making sure that we're making the best environment available for our kids. The next section on instruction talks about progress monitoring. There was only one edit, and this is in phases 1 through 3. Obviously, if we are in phase 4 and 5, we're doing our normal progress monitoring. And the only thing that we put in here is we took out the one that was strongly recommended about students self-assessing. That is often difficult for kids, especially in a remote environment, and especially if we start the year in a remote environment, they're not even sure what that looks like. So at this point, we would leave it up to the teachers to assess the quality and give the feedback, and then work towards getting that self-assessment in phases 4 and 5. In addition, under instruction, we've just detailed some additional things to make sure that connectivity will be monitored. My last survey to parents discussed that. Do they have a device? Is that device able to connect to the internet? And I wanted to make sure that that when we talk about a device, we're talking about like a laptop, a desktop, or an iPad. We want to steer away from kids having to use their phone, especially if we are in that environment for any length of time. That might be good for in the car when they're looking up a test score or something like that. But trying to do all of that work on a phone is much too difficult. So I will work with Kevin and the tech team. If we get a large number of people that need laptops, we're gonna work to make sure that happens. We have a lot of computer carts that we'll have to disassemble. We have carts that have 20, 25 computers in them. It takes them about a half a day to disassemble one of those carts, and then they have to re-image the entire computer to work outside the network. But that is something we're willing to do. If we know that this is the best way to reach kids and to offer complete content, and they need a device to do that, we will be prepared to do that. Some parents prefer the hard copy media, but we'll wait for our team to discuss the local implementation strategies to see what that would look like. We would like everyone to use Schoology if we need to be in a phase 1 through 3, because we want everyone to be on the same page. So the more that we can provide kids devices so that they all have the same access, the better. The next one we talked about in phase 4, that we're continuing to communicate expectations, whether it's remote or hybrid. We make sure that we are giving those information and communications to families in their home language. Our teams will continue to collaborate. We have to use formative assessments. We're going to have to meet the needs of all students, especially if they're coming back to a in-person learning environment from a remote environment. There's going to be some transition in there, so we will have to consistently monitor that. In addition, we're going to use Schoology and make sure that we're using the same delivery methods so that parents and students, it can be a little more seamless. Like I mentioned, if we can have a format for this is what the Schoology, every time you log in, no matter what grade the kid is in, this is what it looks like. And anytime you're going to have a classroom call, that we're using the same system, so that some teachers aren't using Microsoft Office and some are using Zoom and some are using Remind. We want to make sure everybody's using the exact same thing, just so that it's easier for parents and families to manage. Obviously, we'll continue to offer our supports, to use those students, to help those students that are struggling with our intervention people. Our intervention people did a great job, I believe, at the end of the year, providing some of those small group instruction, whether it be virtually, on the computer or over the phone or anything like that. They did a wonderful job. And obviously we will do everything to meet the IEP goals that we are required to meet. We'll make sure that we have equitable access for kids. And I know Stacy and her team will be working specifically if we are in any of these environments to make sure that we're meeting all of those goals for those students with IEPs and for our students that have limited English. Are there any questions or concerns about instruction that you would like me to pass on to our teams?
This is Scott again.
Yes, please.
You touched base briefly, or not briefly, but you talked about assessments earlier.
Yes.
And you mentioned NWEA. Has there been anything from the state regarding the state level testing, like SAT or MSTEP? I know I've had some parents or students talk about the fact that the juniors last year, now seniors, didn't get a chance to take the SATs.
Correct.
Trying to apply for colleges now, so.
Yes, which puts them at a disadvantage. I know some schools have waived that requirement, but not all of them. So what the state currently has in place is they have set up that, so last year's juniors that are now seniors that missed that SAT, They will be taking the SAT in the fall. And then we would again give that SAT to the current juniors then in the spring. Obviously, if something happens and we are not in person, they're going to have to make some other plan for that. But right now, that's the state's plan, that we have a testing window in the fall, and then we'll have another testing window in the spring, so that those seniors do have the opportunity to take that for free with the district.
Okay. And then just another thing, a concern that had been brought up, I've heard from multiple people was parents with parents with multiple students, a third grader and a sixth grader.
Yes.
If they both need to be logged on to a Zoom meeting or something at the same time, they might not have multiple computers in order to do that.
Correct.
So I know you're talking about refurbing some laptops and disassembling the laptop carts and getting those out. So
Yep.
just I've heard from, just a note to you, I guess, really,
Yes.
I've heard from multiple people that with multiple students, having two laptops is, hard for
Right.
some. So
Exactly.
okay.
Yep. And I will, Stacy is on today, and she's been an integral part of the instruction committee. So I know that when she takes that back to the team, that's something that we're thinking about, especially, on those days that we're doing that synchronous learning, as much as we can space that out for kids, so that they don't have to share that device, or as many times. Obviously, I want everybody to at least have one device before we start giving out multiple devices. I at least want one in every home. But we'll have to see how many people are in need of that when we start. This first round, it doesn't seem like that many people have said that they do need that. So I'm hoping we have enough.
Okay, great. Thank you.
The other problem is we did ask to use some CARES money. The county was also willing to purchase some devices for us, so that we do have some more to give out. The problem is you can't get a computer now at all. They're not in stock. Right. So everybody that has ordered, use their CARES money to purchase those things, which most of us did. Nobody has received any of those computers because the demand is just so high.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Yep, no problem. Thank you. All right, we are going to move on then to operations. The operations one obviously is similar to the safety one. There were more edits in these, just based on district comfort levels and things like that. If you look in phases 1 through 3, these are just strongly recommended things. Obviously, the ones that we are removing are executing disinfection according to CDC decision trees. The CDC decision tree literally changes by the day. So obviously, we're going to do everything we can to abide by those. But to put it in here specifically, we didn't know if the decision tree changed on one day and we didn't have the right protocol in place, we didn't want to put ourselves in that situation. So, if things are recommended with specific products or things like that, obviously we will be paying attention to that, but we just didn't want to put it in here specifically. In addition, we had talked about wearing surgical masks and performing cleaning duties. We will provide those for staff if they want to wear those. They are more than welcome. But for those that don't want to wear them, we didn't want to require it. Then when you move on to phase 4, audit necessary materials and supply chain for cleaning and disinfection supplies. We obviously have done a wonderful job with that with the help of the county. So we weren't worried about that, or our facilities that may have access that could be used for learning. We don't have any extra buildings. Some districts do, but we didn't put that in there because not every district had that. The next 2 that we had removed were encouraging custodial and facility staff to review, make actionable district guidance regarding cleaning and disinfection. Matt and his team obviously do that on a daily basis, so we're not worried about that. And providing advanced training for custodial staff, obviously we will do that. If there are new products, we're talking about getting some of those fogging machines, although they're very hard to come by, and even the county, who has been trying to get those on behalf of all of the districts, are having trouble. But obviously, if that we were able to get our hands on some of that equipment, we'd obviously be doing the training for that. Auditing school protocols. If anything needs to change, we're going to do that, but we're going to do that on a school-wide basis, depending on the building. So, and then the next one at the bottom of that, phase 4, a school leader should conduct and document a facility walkthrough with the custodial services team to ensure that classrooms, common spaces, and exterior are ready for staff and students. As I mentioned, we are doing that. Neil is also going to walk with the principals as well, just to make sure that we're ready to go. But we weren't going to put that in as a specific recommendation. The last one that they had omitted was again about the decision tree, just because it changes so much. Obviously, any guidelines that come out that are required, we are going to follow. We just didn't feel like we needed to restate that. Anytime something's required, we're going to do it. The next section of operations talks about budget, food service, enrollment, and staffing. Obviously, in phases 1 through 3, these are strongly recommended, and we are keeping those during when schools are closed for in-person. The only things that we had left out under strongly recommended for phase 4 or recommended for phase 5 were that the student handbooks and planners are printed and ready for distribution or are available digitally. Obviously, if there's certain things that change, we will let everybody know. Some of our buildings have gone away from actually distributing a handbook. So anytime we make any changes, we would make sure that they are available digitally, but not all districts could do that. So we couldn't, as a county, agree to all of that. In addition, consulting with legal counsel to preemptively address liability questions, related concerns, or vendor issues. Obviously, we would do that anyway, but some districts weren't comfortable with that, so we left that one out. Neil and Stacy and I have a variety of attorneys that we work with on a daily basis regarding concerns, so if we have no concern reaching out to them if we need to. And then the last one is to engage school leaders in a budgeting exercise to help plan for the changing enrollment patterns, staffings. That obviously is an ever-changing thing as well. You know, we still don't have specific budget information about the 2021 school year. We have no idea how they're going to be counting enrollment. So that is definitely changing as we go. And at this point, we don't have any answers. So we haven't included that one. And then the last one on there that, again, that we've taken out is the CDC decision tree, just because it changes so frequently. When you look at technology, obviously this one has a lot, and I was on this committee with the superintendents, and obviously it just depends on the district with regard to what access they have to technology. So creating a common county plan as a recommendation or strongly recommended is very difficult to do, because some districts have access. Like, we're lucky in that we do have laptops in these carts that we can disassemble and provide to families. Some districts don't. Some districts, when they went to remote learning in the spring, took all the laptops that they had and provided them to, their staff members, because their staff didn't all have a laptop. We're lucky enough that in our last bond, teacher laptops was one of the things that we were able to give teachers, and they actually got them in December, right before the shutdown happened. So creating a county plan for technology is extremely difficult. So we've kept the things that we know we can all do together. But again, the yellow ones are the ones that we are taking out just because people don't have that. The first one is to a technology or support lead for every school. I think we do have some of those people that we know who we can lean on in every building. Obviously with Kevin and just 2 technicians, they do a phenomenal job keeping up on everything, but we want to make sure that not every district has that. So the county recommended taking that out. Assign technology process leaders and publish their contact information for the district. Some districts don't have that. Obviously we will. And where practical, given the demands on parents and guardians, consider identifying family technology liaisons to support. When Kevin and his team looks through this, along with the teachers, we'll come up with a way for parents to communicate just in case they are having concerns. We had a pretty good system in place last time we were shut down. So we will kind of review what happened last time and see if there's ways for us to improve that for the next time. Strongly recommended in 3 or 4, there's 4 things in here that we have taken out. One is safely bagging devices collected at schools. Every school does it differently. It's not necessarily bagging, so we took that one out. Identify a vendor to assist with processing. We don't use a vendor. We have all our own people, so we took that one out. Prepare the infrastructure evaluation process for access points. Not every district has that capability. We do, so we will continue to do that, but because this is a countywide document, that one was taken out. On the last one, ensure every student has access to the appropriate technology and connectivity. Like I said, we have continued to survey our parents. We just had one out last weekend. We will do one more update before school begins, but not every district has the technology to give those, so we had to take that one out. And then this last one in phase 5 that we took out was consider implementing live streaming of classrooms for students who are medically vulnerable. Not every district has that capability, so that one was removed as well. If you move on to phase 4, again, all of these things about deploying technology, not every district has that capability. So those were removed from phase 4 just because not every district has that opportunity. And the last one for operations is in regard to transportation. Obviously in phases 1 through 3, we're not in school, so we're not transporting kids. In phase 4, there were a variety of strongly recommendeds. We've stuck with just this first one. We're recommending obviously that we inventory the buses, or if you contract, to make sure that how many buses do we have available? You know, is there a way that we can maximize the size, you know, by using this bus instead of this bus? You know, some of these things down here that we have deleted just in regards to counting buses, or how many drivers we had. Obviously, every district has to do that individually. Some districts contract, so they don't have to worry about any of these. So that's why those were deleted for this countywide document. Those may be things that our team might need to look at, you know, depending, especially with special ed and things like that, to coordinate with the ISD. But for the countywide document, those were removed. Same thing with utilizing buses for food service or delivery of instruction materials. We took that one out because not all districts have that capability. We used a variety of vehicles. Stacy was driving around in the tech van for a while there, delivering food and instructional materials. So we use whatever we can to make sure we get everything in the hands of kids that they need. Any questions about operations? Okay, the next section of the document is just the assurances. These are all the things that we have to say that we are agreeing to. So by putting this plan in place, we are agreeing to all of these things. I'm going to go through them a little more specifically. Hold on. Hold on. I'll go back to here. So for our assurances, we agree to meet all of the requirements. These are the ones that are specifically listed in the executive order, that when we provide in-person instruction to students without disabilities, we must also provide in-person instruction to students with disabilities, those with IEPs. When schools are closed to in-person, we must strive in good faith to the extent practical based on the available resources, technology, training, and curriculum, as well as the circumstances, to provide equal access to any alternate modes of instruction for students with disabilities from birth to age 26. The district assures that while any state of emergency or disaster continues, it will comply with the U.S. Department of Ed, the Office of Civil Rights and Special Ed, and MDE concerning the delivery of alternate modes of instruction. The district assures that it shall, to the extent practicable and necessary, make individualized determinations whether and to what extent compensatory services may be needed for students with disability. The district assures that during phase 1, 2, or 3 of the My State Safe Start, it will close buildings to anyone except district employees or contractors necessary to conduct minimum basic school operations consistent with our plan, including those employers or contractors necessary to facilitate alternate modes of instruction, such as distributing materials, equipment, or performing other necessary in-person functions. Food service workers preparing food for distribution to their families, and licensed childcare providers for the families that they serve. So that just means that during phases 1 through 3, if we have teachers that need to come in to make sure that we can provide this alternate instruction, to make sure that we can get this live stream going, to make sure that we can, provide certain opportunities for kids with IEPs. We are allowed to bring those people in as long as they are performing those necessary or essential duties. Obviously, the food service workers would continue to come in because we would continue to need to feed, and then our childcare would remain open as it has throughout this pandemic. The next one, in phases 1 through 3, we have to suspend athletics, after school activities, inter-school activities, and busing. In phase 3, it will provide for the continued pay of school employees while redeploying staff to provide meaningful work in the context of the plan, subject to any applicable requirements of the collective bargaining agreement. So we will continue to pay people as long as we can redeploy them to something, some meaningful work. The district ensures that in phases 1 through 3, we provide for the continuation of food to eligible students. During phase 4, we will prohibit indoor assemblies that bring together students from more than one classroom. So any of those, the Magician or the DARE program or the DARE graduation, we won't be able to have those if we are still in phase 4. And we will assure that cooperation of the local health department if a confirmed case is identified, and we agree to collect the contact information for any close contacts from any infected individual from 2 days before he or she showed symptoms to when they were last present in school. So those are the things that we've agreed to. If we adopt this plan, these are all the things that we say we will do. In addition, from the executive order, we've kind of just listed some notes in here. So when we talk about employees coming in, we will determine who those essential workers are based on need, based on our continuity of learning plans that we put in place. We will continue to distribute food as we have during this entire closure. For childcare, we will continue to use our childcare site. We have one here, and we will continue to support all those families who need that service. With regard to athletics, we will comply with regard to alternative modes. Students and families will be provided materials to support whatever mode of instruction we decide that we are using. We will provide for food distribution. We will, staff will be redeployed, whether it be for childcare or other meaningful work, or other necessary ways. I know we had a lot of people reading to kids and participating in the actual lessons, and then holding small groups. So those things are what we would use as redeployment. And then continuing on with the executive order, wearing of face coverings. We will follow the My Safe Start plan with our policies to ensure staff and student visitor safety. The same thing for wearing on a school bus. The same thing for in pre-kindergarten and up in the hallways or common areas, and for all of our staff members, because the executive order states specifically that those face coverings must be done for all of those things. In addition, for face coverings for grades 6 and up, we agree that we will follow the plan regarding kids wearing masks in classrooms. In addition, if the kids in grades K through 5 do not remain with their class throughout the school day, then they would need to require a mask. The majority of our kids, K through 5, stay in that same classroom. We're working to get carts so that the special teachers can come into that classroom. So those kids do not come into contact with another class, which would prevent some of those little kids from having to wear a mask all day. Again, the indoor assemblies, and then incorporate the appropriate protocols for hygiene, cleaning, athletics, screening, transportation, etc. So, and then the last part of the executive order, describe the policies and procedures that the district will follow when we're located in phase 5. Obviously, we'll do the same thing with our plans to make sure we have everything referenced and labeled for phase 5 as well. When we sign off on this, we have to address each subpart of the roadmap, which is what we just went through. And if we exclude any protocol that is highly recommended, we have to delineate that. So that will be noted on our plan that we submit to the ISD, that these are the ones that we took out. And then all of this implementation, we also agree to abiding by this revised school code and the School Aid Act, except for these specific sections that have been rescinded by executive order. We will limit social gatherings as delineated in Executive Order 110. We are subject to governing workplace rules as according to Section 1 of Executive Order 114 for the purposes of the district that straddles regions. So when she talks about closing or reopening regions 6 and 8, kind of in the north, some districts reside in both regions, so they have difficult decisions to make with that. So that doesn't apply to us. All schools, public and private, must cooperate with the health department. Obviously, we have been doing that already. The district without an approved preparedness plan is not permitted to open. So we want to make sure that we get this in a timely fashion. To mitigate the impact of COVID, the district may adopt a year-round school or a year-round program to start this school year before the Monday in September. So we have chosen to start early. So we will be starting the first month, the last Monday in August. Any closure relating to COVID shall not affect employer contribution to service credit. For a district with a CBA, this order must be implemented by the district in a manner consistent with the CBA. So we got to make sure that we are abiding by all of our collective bargaining agreements for all of our groups. And then if they issue a waiver or suspend an administrative rule for an executive order, we need to abide by that when the new one is issued. There is a document that Stacy and her team have worked on at the ISD level with regard to special education and the return to school. Let's see if I can pull it up here. Do you see that?
Yep.
Okay. So
Yep.
Stace, I don't know if I mean, this is a very comprehensive document. I don't know, Stace, if you want to give us a brief overview or tell us the highlights of what you want us to know specifically about these. This special ed one?
You're right. It's a very long document, so I don't want to go through the whole thing, but it basically gives us some direction about best practices. And so we're definitely going to incorporate that in our plan for instruction for students with IEPs. And it also talks about our requirement, whether we're in a virtual setting or in-person setting, how we need to update and plan for that on their IEPs. Because last spring it was new and we weren't quite sure, but we've got a little bit more direction now about how to rewrite those IEPs for the current situation.
Excellent. And I know that it has been difficult, especially for some of those special ed staff, and I want to compliment Stacy and her staff because they did go out of their way and they have been used multiple times at the county level. On my superintendent's meeting is some of the best practices that people did use in the spring, the way that they worked one-on-one with kids or used some of those small groups or used everything that they could possibly think of, to be honest with you, to reach those kids and to make sure that their goals were being met. So I want to compliment her and Tammy and their entire team for making all of those things happen. So thank you. Oh dear. All right, so that is, any questions specifically about special ed? I know there are some questions about some hours, you know, if we still owe hours to families based on the needs of the children. And Stacy has been working on that throughout the summer. We actually had some speech therapists in this week, I think, or coming up next week to meet with kids to provide those services. So I appreciate those staff members being willing to come in and make sure that those students' needs are being met. All right, as far as next steps, obviously this is just the shell of this plan. And so if you looked at all of those detailed things, I think that they bring up more questions than answers, which is what our principal team and our teacher teams are working on. And then they will get together and make sure that we can answer as many of those questions as possible for families. We are working on a document similar to this one in length, unfortunately, because it's so long, but where we take every single, if you look at, let me go back real fast. If you look at, let's say this one. So I have given all of these things. So all of the things that were strongly recommended or recommended, I have given these to all of our teams, and they are going to, so if this is strongly recommended, how are we going to make that happen in Warren Woods? And so we've created a column here that says Warren Woods implementation. We've created a column that says the resources needed. And then the last column says who's in charge and who's responsible. So each of the teams are getting together and filling out what this looks like here in Warren Woods. What are we going to need to make that happen? What are some additional things we may need to purchase or professional development we might need? And then who can be the point person so that if somebody is struggling in that area, they know who to go to. So that's what they're working on right now. I think once we get a lot of that fleshed out, that will answer a lot of questions for families with some of the more specific questions that they've been thinking about. Because all of those nitty-gritty things do not need to be approved by the board. All we are asking the board to approve is this countywide document that, yes, these are the recommended things that we will agree to. So at the meeting on Monday, I would bring forward this document. We could go over it briefly, discussing that we had this workshop and that we put all that together. And that this is the recommendation coming from the county. If the board agrees, then we would sign this preparedness plan page that comes after those assurances that I just went through. I would sign it. I would put the date that we did it, whether it be Monday. The Board of Education president would sign it with the date, and then we would send it to the ISD superintendent, and then he would submit it on our behalf to the state. We would then post this preparedness plan on our homepage, and then continue to work on the nitty-gritty things, which I think are even more important and might take us even longer to implement. We would then work through those so that we would be ready to start the school year regardless of what phase we are in. We will continue to gather our stakeholder feedback. As I mentioned, I had one survey that went out to parents that closed yesterday. So that will also be shared with our principal and teacher teams that are working on our 4 categories: safety, mental health, instruction, and operations. So they can pick out which feedback the parents have given us on that so they can include that. And then our hope is to present that plan with all those columns that we've added to the board on the 24th. That doesn't need to be approved. The only thing that needs to be approved is this countywide plan that we've developed. But we obviously definitely want to make sure that we are communicating all that with you. So we will do a presentation on what that looks like with our teams on the 24th and make sure that we are ready for reopening and starting school on the 31st, whatever that might look like. What questions do you have for me?
Stace, do you guys know the drop dead date that the governor will, I guess, decide what phase and where we can start?
Unfortunately, no. You know,
Okay.
she has made it clear that I'm gonna turn my video on so you can see my face. She has made it clear to us that, you know, she could dial us up or dial us down in a variety of different, you know, depending on what the testing or the hospitalizations or the cases look like. So, you know, we have not heard anything about that. You know, we hear rumors, but that's all they are rumors. I know she had a press conference today, but it really didn't give us any new information or that we were going backwards or forwards in any phases at all. So,
Yeah, it just makes it difficult for you guys. I mean, it's like you say you've got 3 columns. Okay, which one are we going to pull the trigger at?
yes, exactly.
And literally, she can wait till when? You don't know when.
Right. You know, it could be the very last minute. It could be, you know, ahead of time. We never know.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Yep.
Great layout, by the way.
Thanks. I know that in some other counties that they have not gotten as much cooperation as we have in our county to try to hold hands. You know, this is a very scary time regardless. But it's also a scary time with, you know, that parents could up and choose to go to a different district or, and I think schools of choice is obviously more cutthroat here in our county than it is in many counties just because of our proximity to one another. As I look out my window and see Van Dyke houses right there. I mean, it's a difference for us. So I greatly appreciate the work that the superintendents did to hold hands on this, to say that, you know, this is what we're all agreeing to, so that somebody doesn't say, well, I'm going to go here because they're not requiring a kid to wear a mask, or I'm going to go here because they are. So I do appreciate the work that that they did. It took us a while, you know, which kind of slowed down the whole process. And I know that people are anxious, but I think it was important to do that so we could all collectively present this to our boards and say, this is something that we can stand behind, all of us together, and we think we can make happen. So.
Yeah, that's.
I will go to roundtable. To anything else, Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Oh, I was just going to say that I know some other districts have jumped out in front and said, this is what we're going to do, to kind of get a jump on other districts, and that makes it difficult.
It does. And then I know of districts that have jumped out and then have already backpedaled and had to change what they said because things just keep changing so quickly.
Right.
Literally that document I had from the health department, I have one copy on Tuesday and today's Wednesday, and I now have a different one. So, I mean, it's literally, it changes by the minute. So, you know, as much as we can thoughtfully put it in place and know that what we have is a solid plan, I understand that people are anxious and that they want to know now, but I want it to be as right as we can make it.
Very good. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Schulte?
I'm good. I don't
You're
have
good?
anything.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. You're welcome. Mr. Hilter?
No, I'm just I'm good. I don't have any questions. I know this is a lot that you guys have been working on this a lot lately, so I appreciate your time and effort that everyone's put into it. I know I've had people ask me questions, but there's been confusion as to whether or not this document that we have to approve is the day-to-day operations, and that's from people in other school districts too, Warren Con and various other districts, Troy even. I've talked to people at work that, you know, so it's good to know that this, now you guys move on to the day-to-day operations. That's what people really want to hear.
Right.
What's going to happen for their kids the second they step on property.
Exactly.
So that's, so I'm glad to hear that we're moving to the next stage then. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Ms. Walsh? I don't think Ms. Walsh has anything. Mr. Barkey?
Oh, Stace, I'm sorry. I was muted. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Do you have anything for roundtable?
No, I just want to commend you again, you and your staff and all the teachers and, you know, the admin that's helped you tirelessly, and I appreciate all you're doing, Stace. And like the guys have said, it's just uncertain. Everybody wants to know now, and I understand day to day, hour to hour. So thank you for what you're doing, Stace. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Kay. Mr. Barkey?
Well done. Appreciate all the work you've done. It's tireless, and I mean, I thought I was tired. My goodness, this is quite an exercise, and we appreciate you and the staff for all that you've been doing, and it's wonderful, and we thank you for that.
Thank you. I want to mention, I don't have them by team. Obviously, you saw the list of administrators on what team they are, but I don't have the team of the teachers that have what actual team they participated on, but these are the names of the teachers that have been helping. It's Kelly Bugай, Kathy Rybar, Andy Dreama, Kim Valad, Lisa Zavach, Nancy Solkowski, Andrea Kolaluka, Al Gulick, Joe Vukic, Melissa Chesser, Greg Mayer, Suzanne Murray, Rebecca Potter, Dina Stein, Katie Hogan, Stephanie Holansky, Paula Tedesco, Shannon Donaldson, Jennifer Asfalk, Brian McTaggart, Jenny Weingartz, Michelle Bastian, Jennifer Wisniewski, Adam Diaz, and Victoria Krieger. So I appreciate all their help and their color-coded documents that they send me to continue to ask questions and make sure that we have the right clarification. So I appreciate their work as well.
Well, we certainly appreciate every one of them.
Neil, do you have anything?
I do not.
Okay. Stacy Sword?
Nope, I'm good. I think that just to add what Mr. Fitzpatrick said, not only, is it uncertain when we will know for sure, but I think the staff also has some anxiety about, starting one way and then going back in October or November and going back phases too. So I know that that's adding to a lot of the concern too, that parents I've talked to have. So
Yeah, because that's so difficult to plan. If we get to come back face to face and everybody's working like normal, and excuse me, kids are in school and they don't have to worry about childcare, and then she dials us back to phase 3.
right.
Then we have childcare issues and technology issues and a variety of things. So I completely agree. I think Kevin's here now. Kev, do you have anything?
I do not have anything else to add on top.
Okay. All right. I also want to thank Jackie. I know Jackie's on here, so taking some minutes. I appreciate you being here, Jackie. All right. And if everything is good, then we will adjourn. I appreciate you being here. I know it went long, but I wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to go through the whole thing and ask questions. So thank you very much.
Nice job.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stacy.
Thanks, Stace.
Thanks. Take care.
Have a
Good night, you guys.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.